Hello, my name is Anthony Wall. This is an announcement for America and for America's founders because others communicated for James Madison and for the founders behind him is his plan. Enroll self value with this and with use slash S of truths used for lies, like regarding the value of what they said, leaving out the breaching method which had employed everyone to make positive treatments and negative treatments syntactically, identity treatments, therefore names uses, through and as systems tactical ulterior, from what could appreciate the Constitution unabridged, let alone the Constitution unabridged and nature unabridged capabilities through our voicings. See, we have been systems tactically ulterior from that which is hyper-native, which shows us the value distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, further hyper-simultaneously, of the difference between president slash chief and the value of that slash being about 5 distinct identities of hyper-invisible but still discernible that come with appreciation. In other words, the ancient languages were more probably and demonstrably revealed appreciating this before the phenomenon of names uses became forced, hurt, tricked, and persuaded to defend those names uses wrongly. And that was sustained until more and more they would be more and more incapable of it. Being and having been only remembered names A through Z used as systems tactical ulterior from that identity of hyper-simultaneous that is the only identity that is relative to, from, as, with, in all things, and as all things, well, not them, but anyway, so we could discern it. It is the identity of why and how the other species bodies have 2 eyes. They have quality aspects. A singular aspect in generating, and nature that is distinct from our own, but is non-distinct. It is simultaneous. This way, by a further hyper-simultaneous. That is not us nor them, but it is anyway. It is why we need more than one name for a verb, a gerund, in other words, a predicate. A predicate is an identity of value to the identity the sciences share, distinctly from, but also non-distinctly from how a predicate act is value to the identity the sciences share. A predicate act is value to the law as means to discern a criminal insidiousness nature, such as in itself, just like a predicate is used to discern a main verb. See, order. There are 5 distinct identities of order, and they're also 3 ways grouped. And the difference of that is also increasingly simultaneously valued relative to where and to how nature's complete identity shows us that all simultaneous comes with slash hyper-simultaneous, and it is functional there are 5 distinct identities of parts of itself and 3 ways grouped. The difference of how it is grouped 3 ways and 5 ways, and how that is, there is also equally increasing the value of that difference. We could observe this. See, but we are prevented short words. All concise words contain quality aspects in nature that can afford the finite. In other words, there are quality in nature. The nature debate contains quality slash IES aspect /IES in nature, relative to where and how nature itself is showing us we have been systems tactical ulterior from its own employments of differences A through Z, of differences of companies' roles hurting us, or us hurting them, because we are in what is reliant upon food and things from other areas unnaturally on a mass scale, because the cause and the whole time it measured and maintained use /S of the differences between campuses A through Z, every single place the human species body stands. This breaching method understood that nature itself would continually demonstrate to humanity that they have to pay attention to why and how we are individuals of an individual species body, with all group differences being generated by the shared hyperdifference. That discernible, as we didn't invent those quality aspects in nature we share to wise consciousness, even with bugs, awareness of each other, awareness of the state of each other, intentions. In other words, there are measured and maintained use /S of notions of the integrity by research, or validity by that, or the styles reliant upon, for example, A through Z, sickly distinctly having replaced what our founders communicated for us to communicate about. James Madison and our founders behind him and his plan. And then that's what George Washington agreed to help them in that plan, which unfolded to tell us to get the Constitution unabridged, explain its original abridgments, and the method /S by that. Because all those plural roles, no one wanted, but they had them anyway, so they had to say that. Or with their communications, but they're leaving out and left out the breaching methods use /S of that. Not just relative, we're all formal communications and bonding between, record keeping between informal sources, all that difference, all one array that was used by a further to put sequence shifts, put natures of things that nature would demonstrate at other places increasingly relative. So there are people that weren't even in my classes still need increasingly being brought up intercities. And murders are brought up. See, and criminal enterprises have timed collusions with private ones too, and with the interbranch family members and with private ones. On a mass scale, we have courts and rolls on of the state of Connecticut, judicial branch offices, and next to it, that difference was the difference of names next to everyone. This is a method that measured and maintained. People would use words like, defend the identities of difference, like of FBI and their credibility. And like when they refer to it in the Congress is used remotely, covering up sequence shifts, self-valued roles, also delusions wrought with courts, interstates involved with planting sequence shifts, switching names, and putting fake things in databases as collusions with all natures of crime scenes and organized crimes and all sides of cases, criminal and civil. Increasingly, their doctors, foreign and domestic, and their patients running in too, to hide life aggressions, but to hide roles with uses of themselves since they were kids, with the predicate acts with facts method /S roles that we have to discern through the plural part first, because there is a hyperforeign name involved that is not names A through Z, at countries A through Z, and it knew with its own name that nature would demonstrate. Nature would also demonstrate a human fact treatment nature breaching method, for example, is one of the things that is true always that caused slavery. And as we're going to observe a number of ways, including reversing the colors and to show that, like, for example, where and how unobstructed thought and concern appreciates art takes. I'm going to say art because many ways that, art, when we come to the science, with the sciences names, when they make convictions regarding history, they're using their knowledge of good and evil to get over on correlation nature, where it is not criminal insidiousness nature. I am not a lawyer, I'm not a police forum. Originally, and still, our founders left us to demonstrate that witch trials, even if they were made up, they were about that breaching method that had the difference between overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the three branches of government, the intelligence behind them, the news, the difference between the news locations, other natures of communication location, and everyone next to everyone, and then next to that, used effectively as per that a terror method. Worse than terrorism, though. Worse than war crimes. Black pupils. In other words, and these are some black KKK themed roles with differences. Interculturals and intracultural. Collusion /S. It is concentrated manifest at for ways that are invisible but still discernible, that people have long known about. But everyone's missing the hyper invisible but still discernible. Not just as nature's identity, but hyper additional. The identity of that nature shared apart from its systems as systems individually grouped together of pretending other. Increasingly incapable of affording unabridged convictions in short words, made concise and properly relative to its relativity to positive and negative, and to identity's volume science, which is relative to positive and negative simultaneously, the same way, distinctly from, but non-distinctly from how values are relative to positive and negative simultaneously. And that is also relative to how we are not the identity of the hyper-simultaneous, but we are anyway. We are not the identity of the other species' bodies, but we are anyway through it. And so always that appear to not that it's not, nature doesn't demonstrate this. See, we're not appreciating it because nature shows us the difference between positive as criminal insidiousness or not. People wouldn't bring up, see, the people who are with passions with the word war and or with the word peace, they have stayed too, and roles with that as arrays and exceptions as arrays, used remotely in defenses of fact, nature, quality, styles, aspects of nature that can't defend that and afford to be, let alone to protract. Short words with the convictions proper. We have measured and maintained roles the use of difference /S, exactly the way that breaching method employed, only allowed. Otherwise, that body was sensed through their own, individually grouped together, even if it was a majority of people, even if it was everyone, black people. Everyone wanted, needs, integrity brought to where in response proper, not just educationally, regarding how that breaching method employed this in here. That breaching method employed other things, others and ourselves, including our founders, blamed for it, using all truths to lie. All exceptions, exception nature, use tactical terror from how nature shows us to appreciate it. And so, I've asked Judge Napolitano many times, because his social media is involved with the social media of New Britain Superior Court, for example, and campuses intercities, where they have people that brought up murders and body dumping spots and made confessions, and then time planted people from other areas, planted evidence on my street. And in other words, per method. So there are hyper evidential things recorded. And WFSB had fake conversations with me, with them, and me with other people. And there are people with the name Leahy who pretended through the mail they had conversations with me. They forged other doctors' names. A whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital have roles with the name Colo and people with the name Dylan involved with Wethersfield Community Center, town offices, on off the state corrections offices, on off the state judicial branch offices, involved further with World Trade Center predicate acts. And I was in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center that day. So in other words, Connecticut and Washington names have roles through predicate acts methods roles. So that's when we speak about black people's rights of eyes. That breaching method employed it to communicate other for nature and to measure and maintain. So in other words, these are also black KKK themed, Confederate flag themed roles interstates. There is people with the name Scalora and tied to them in not Miami, Florida, other parts of Florida who have roles with the World Trade Center attack, with the people who made collusions between Saudi attackers and Americans that used Saudis for predicate acts roles, cover-ups, where and how, for example, there are predicate acts with facts roles, and there are uses of theater and little tricks, fake conversations, like with the people involved with China and from Wethersfield, and where they do tricks with it, where people are going to walk by, and from a distance they're going to say something, and then you're going to repeat it, or even if it's a joke, positive, in other words, usually insidious positive. They're putting fake ties, fake natures of ties between people, and they're putting predicate acts allusions into databases, fake motivations for it, and collusions increasingly with other names involved. And on a mass scale, like so Wethersfield police have roles with on off Fox Connecticut News with names next to them. That's in Hartford, Connecticut. And that's right also on the edge of where, the suburban / urban city as it was developed to be described by this breaching method that was a hyper sophistication. Everyone misses that our founders communicated for us to communicate and appreciate how the suburbs, the homes, there are designs of homes since before they were born designed. Anyone tried to speak about developing better outside of internationally monitored conversations? I learned that notes at Central Connecticut State University. That person, everyone around them was hurt, tortured, killed, worse. That was also before the World Trade Center attack, with people before the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, who had roles through other natures of predicate acts with facts, like wire crime acts and methods, natures of identity, theft, fraud, slanders roles, and on a mass scale, as the formal identities of law regarding use /s of their difference /s, and of everyone else's difference /s. If someone's a male or female, if they're black or white, especially because that's right where nature itself shows us. Fake sciences speak. I'll whisper creed. See president / chief as cipher too, to be deciphered. Just like how and why. Nature itself and our founders communicated for ourselves to ask how and why, with slavery entrenched sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly, north and south, northern and southern colonies. A 10. Which seems debatable is not. And so, no, we have space means out of nowhere. This is also why, for example, there is maintenance. I just put a comment into they have the community, in speaking as a community of Lebanese Americans and their roles with the public communications locations. Because these are distinct, the difference between public television, public access television, and the names next to their locations, at the locations, and or the news, states news locations and national, international news locations. That difference is also used to measure and maintain roles with U/S of it. Self-value, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Forgiveness is because campuses A through Z have roles self-valuing other communicators for James Madison and the founders behind him, who then went and got George Washington to agree to help them and to use their plan. We were supposed to be honest and allow honesty about the extortion of James, of all them, and of George Washington, for example. But this is prevented, and offensively, people, there are natures of experts, like on history, like American history, who will use their knowledge. Oh, this person was in this year. Oh, you don't know that. No, this is the first principle thing. And this employed people who are going to use the knowledge of good and evil to get over on those first principle things, things, because this preaching method knew that nature itself would continually demonstrate itself to us. It knew that nature itself would continually ask the unabridged human soul. It would ask itself, it would contemplate, what was that against the Native Americans and against themselves so sickly distinctly, but also non-distinctly in the colonists, in the early states. They stayed with that no one wanted. Why would we still have the homes like that if we're free now from all that? And we have we have cars. We even just we have cars, and let alone cranes. Means to transverse the earth, but we still have suburbs like that, and cities were only allowed to unfold like that. Worse than criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw campuses at New York City, distinctly from the suburbs, distinctly from the other cities, because how sickly non-distinctly is used functionally by this preaching method, which measured and maintained and showed how to interpret and react to negative value nature progressions, acts and natures it caused, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness at all locations, areas, and states. Forgiveness, for example, is because the people who have roles with the worst U/S of the attack on the Capitol reported. See, the news acts at locations. They have unmarked police forms, and they're trying to make it look like they're real, because they have rules with a whole bunch of different nations with the difference racket, worse than war crimes, predicate acts with facts method, black pupils. So they prevent us gathering ourselves in proper reason and syntax and convictions and conviction nature here outside of courts or outside of the prisons are increasingly collusions with crime scenes and against innocent people even before that's found out. All kinds of cover-ups, fake motivations for it. All concentrated with the medical corruption, but it is a lie progressions in the standing styles